they were hugely active in free agency, pretty bold in the draft as well. I mean, from a free agent standpoint, they brought in Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith, so a couple of tight ends that they're going to pay big money to. I guess they're going to be running a bunch of 2 tight end sets. They brought in Matthew Judon, linebacker, to help out there. Kyle Van Noy, they brought him back as well at linebacker, so he'll be in there. Defensive tackle Devon Godshaw got signed. He's going to start for them. Defensive tackle and Henry Anderson should be in the rotation, if not a starter for them. They brought in Jalen Mills at defensive back, wide receiver Kendrick Bourne, Nelson Aguilar. Pretty much everyone I mentioned is going to be starters for this. So, I mean, like, these are all guys that they brought in that are all going to either start or play a very, very significant amount of time for them. They traded for Trent Brown as well. He is likely to either win the position outright or be a major part of that offensive line going forward too. So it's kind of a redone Patriots team this year. It's going to be a new look Patriots team for sure. Then their draft picks, we know about Mac Jones in the first round, but then Christian Barmore in the second round, defensive tackle. He's likely to play very heavy minutes, if not be a starter. Defensive end and Ronnie Perkins, they took in the third round, same deal, very heavy minutes, if not a starter for them as well. So, I mean, they're going to, it's going to be a Patriots team where, yeah, Cam Newton is going to look the same, and they're just going to look around and be like, oh, this is a pretty different looking team. Like, this is a pretty different looking team.
Did Judon, I'm sure you'll tell us here with your Pro Football Focus ratings, but didn't Judon have like a really bad rating last year? Because I remember being surprised when they flash it up on primetime games. They show up they would show up the Pro Football Focus numbers, and I remember being really surprised that he was that low.
He was more middle of the pack, yeah, as opposed to being kind of like up there with some of the. And actually the same with Van Noy last year as well. Like, it was, you know, he left New England and didn't really get maybe it was defensive scheming, maybe it was whatever it might have been that didn't really fit him, but they bring him back. Obviously they feel like that they can get what they need out of him. On a DVOA standpoint last year, I mean, as you would imagine, 23rd ranked offense, 26th ranked defense in 2020. And that's really the big thing about this Patriots team, because if you remember when we were talking about all this, like, one of the very best defenses in 2019 in the league. Like, that was like the thing that kind of carried them in 2019 was the defense, and it was just then like legitimately bad in 2020. But as you mentioned, Gil, I mean, they had, they did add a lot in free agent, but they also had all those guys opt out. I mean, including Dante Hightower, which is going to be a guy that they get back as well. That's basically like a massive add for them too, who is a guy that opted out last year. So Hightower now steps right back in and is a guy that's going to be going for this team. And, so you are going to have a new look Patriots, but again, it's going to be a whole bunch of guys playing together for the first time. So what is the, what is the relationship going to look like? What is the chemistry going to look like? We will certainly find out. PFF has them ranked kind of right in the middle of the pack, 16th power ranking coming in, 0.9% Super Bowl win probability. They actually have them projected at 8 wins. And so if we kind of look at where their win total sits right now at 9, they have them hitting the under like 71.1% of the time. Again, this is just one projection system, but a projection system nonetheless. So, and as we talked about, whenever we saw that they were a little bit higher on the Jets, we had to figure that they were a little bit down on the Patriots, and that is indeed the case here. The defensive line, look, you can't really argue with what they've got here on the defensive line, just the defensive side of the ball in general. When you talk about their kind of front seven, we talked about all these additions. I mean, Matthew Judon, Kyle Van Noy, Devon Godshaw, Henry Anderson, Montravius Adams, Christian Barmore, Ronnie Perkins. All these guys are all going to play super heavy minutes, if not be starters from the get-go there. So this like kind of front seven is going to really look a lot different for them. And then they should have a really good offensive line as well. Isaiah Wynn made a pretty big leap in his sophomore year for them, played really well, graded out pretty well, made a big leap in pass defense as well for him. Shaq Mason is certainly a stud. As I mentioned, they traded for Trent Brown, so he's going to be in there starting for them as well. So you should have a pretty decent offensive line as well. It's really just going to come down to Cam Newton, right? And Cam Newton, by a couple of different standards, basically in the bottom 5 to 6 rated quarterbacks heading into this league. I mean, Pro Football Focus has him at 27. I've seen Football Outsiders ranking kind of have him down at 28. I've seen ESPN over there kind of have him in that 26, 27-ish type range. And mainly because of what we saw from him last year. Early in the season, he had a bunch of running success. You remember when he was running for all those like rushing touchdowns, and that's when they were actually kind of winning games. And we thought, okay, well, maybe this Patriots team is going to be better than we thought because Cam Newton. And then that kind of faded off there. He had a sub 60 passing grade in 8 of his 14 starts last year, which is super, super bad. And That said, he did not have a ton of help. I mean, his number one target, if we remember, he's throwing to Damiere Byrd. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like his number one wide receiver on a week-to-week basis was Damiere Byrd. So it's kind of like
the law firm of Jacoby Myers.
Yeah,
right. We used to say that.
And so it's just kind of like he didn't have a ton of help. Now, that being said, is a starting wide receiver tandem of Kendrick Bourne and Nelson Aguilar going to be the answer here? I don't necessarily think so.
But that brings us back to the initial point that Danielle cited there, which is Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry, right?
Yeah.
The two tight ends. So, by the way, and we flashed up also DraftKings, who will start week 1 for the Patriots. Start, by the way, it says, not take for snap, start. Cam Newton minus 305. We have no reason to believe it won't be anybody but Cam in this one. So I think Cam is appropriately priced there.